The world of Runeterra might be one of the most fascinating and intricate fantasy settings in modern gaming. While League of Legends is commonly associated with its wildly popular competitive scene, Riot Games have been taking great strides in recent years to flesh out their world and the characters that reside within, even going so far as to reboot the entire story in 2015. While this push for a deeper narrative has been widely appreciated by the game's lore community, the results have been controversial at times. With a retconned world came the need to retcon characters. Riot has made a substantial effort in the last few years to reimagine the backstories of League's iconic champions to fit them into the new lore, but not every change has been met with positive feedback. Let's face it, no writer is perfect and hindsight is 2020, so a number of characters throughout the years have been left with less than stellar backstories compared to most of the roster. Still, it is my firm belief that criticism should always be supplemented with suggestions and feedback for improvement, which is what we're here to discuss today. Hello and welcome to Runeterra Rewrites, a series in which I'll be offering my own takes on League's most controversial stories and champions. My aim is simple, to propose alternative versions of these stories that better match the characters' themes and concepts, without needing to alter anything regarding their in-game designs or voice lines. With all that being said, please sit back, relax, and let us begin, shall we? Far across the sea, all but forgotten to time and memory, lies the crumbling ruins of a once mighty kingdom. Few know its name, and fewer still know the tragic tale of its fall. But the tale of its last king, the king that drove his homeland of Camavor to ruin, is known almost exclusively to the dead. That king's name is Viego. Viego was never meant to rule. Born the second son of his generation, the title of king was meant for his elder brother Huerte. Viego seemed to hold no interest in governance, instead spending his days indulging in whatever suited his fancy at the time. The only real talent he possessed was swordsmanship, but Viego lacked the motivation even to hone the craft. He was wont to flee the capital and gallivant around the kingdom, exploring the world beyond Camavor's stuffy capital. It was during one such excursion that Viego met a young seamstress named Isolde, and quickly found himself smitten. As Viego and Isolde slowly deepened their bond, a messenger from the capital arrived in her village bearing grave news. Prince of Huerte had passed from a sudden illness, and Viego was now next in line for the throne. Reluctantly, Viego agreed to return to the castle and accept his new position, on the condition that Isolde be allowed to accompany him. While many nobles and retainers protested, Viego remained adamant, and eventually managed to receive his father's reluctant blessing to take Isolde as his wife. It wasn't long before Viego's aging father passed as well, and the throne was officially handed to the last member of the royal family. As king, Viego quickly proved himself to be lacking compared to his brother. As ever, he preferred to pursue his own interests rather than concern himself with the nuance of governance, and nothing held his interest quite like Isolde. Viego did all in his power to help her adjust to life in the castle, neglecting his duties to spend time with her and spending vast amounts of wealth to shower her with lavish gifts. Such behavior bred discontent in Viego's retainers and advisors. Some believed that the girl must be removed from the picture, while others believed it best to be rid of Viego and place the crown in the hands of someone more capable. Soon enough, assassins infiltrated the palace, and a fierce clash between them and the royal guard ensued. Amidst the chaos, a lone dagger struck the queen, burrowing into her flesh and infecting her with a lethal venom. Though the assassins were eventually felled, Viego despaired as he held his dying queen in his arms, and commanded his soldiers to find a way to save her. Healers and mages throughout the kingdom were brought to Isolde's bedside, but they could do little more than prolong her dwindling life. Soldiers were dispatched beyond Camavor's shores to seek a cure, but it was too late. The venom soon claimed Isolde's life, and Viego shut himself away in her bedchambers to mourn. As the kingdom slowly decayed around him, Viego wallowed in his own despair and misery, until Callista, one of his fiercest generals, brought tale of a mythical place called the Blessed Isles. There, she claimed, an order of monks guarded the sacred waters of life, said to be capable of healing any ailment or injury. In desperation, Viego made preparations to sail for these fabled isles, using a map Callista herself provided that showed how to circumvent their concealing mists. With Isolde stored safely in an immaculate casket, the king left his land behind in search of the one thing that could bring his love back to him, or so he hoped. Alas, when Viego arrived, the monks were not as accommodating as he'd thought they'd be. He begged them, pleaded with them, to grant him access to the waters of life. The monks refused, warning Viego that what he would attempt would only bring catastrophe, but their words fell on deaf ears. Enraged, Viego ordered his soldiers to slaughter everyone that stood in their way, and though some rebelled, including Callista, they were no match for Viego's most loyal and bloodthirsty warriors, the Iron Order. As the Blessed Isles descended into chaos, Viego kept a close guard on Isolde's casket, cutting down any that dared get too close. That is, until one of the monks approached with an offer. This man, calling himself Thresh, promised to take Viego to the waters of life in exchange for his own survival. Though skeptical, Viego agreed, and had his soldiers cut a path through for him and Thresh. True to his word, the warden guided Viego to the fabled waters, and the last remnants of his order were cut down before him. In the chaos, Thresh fled, but Viego paid him no mind. The king had found what he'd come for, and nothing else mattered. Carefully, Viego took Isolde from her casket and lowered her into the water. Silence followed. The waters of life restored Isolde's decaying beauty, and even closed the dagger wound in her flesh, but her eyes remained closed and her pulse remained still. Viego's elation turned to rage, then sorrow, then grief yet again. He stood there alone at the sacred pool, hoping against hope that a miracle might occur. But what he received instead was a tragedy, just as the monks foretold. Elsewhere on the Isles, a cataclysm of dark magic erupted forth from the vaults of Helia, corrupting everything it touched, living and dead alike. The darkness washed over Viego, amplifying the grief and rage he already felt. But just then, Isolde stirred within the water. The magics of the waters of life and this black mist clashed, and Isolde rose again in a cry of agony. Viego watched as his queen's very soul split apart in front of him, its pieces scattering from her flesh to parts unknown. What remained in Isolde's body looked to Viego with pure malice, and though he tried to call out to her, Viego could only watch as Isolde took his own blade and rammed it through his chest. The king fell at the edge of the waters, his vision fading to black as the darkness consumed him. When Viego next awoke, the chamber was empty, and his memory a blur. He emerged into a land shrouded by the black mist, and inhabited by tortured wraiths. However, none of that concerned Viego. He did not know or understand what had happened during his long slumber, but he knew one thing for certain. Isolde was out there somewhere, scattered and lost, and he would be the one to salvage her. Taking up the very blade that had impaled him so long ago, Viego resolved to make this land of darkness his new kingdom, and spread the black mist to every corner of the world until his queen was found. For Isolde is his light, and if he cannot have her, then only darkness will remain.